But HR and our safety department and our accounting department and our IT department, we will never generate one single penny for this company. Never. It's not what we do. But you better believe we can cost avoid.
Hi everyone, I'm Julia Lefebvre, and around here we talk about leading with clarity, rewiring our mindset, and growing from the inside out. Tired of all the old leadership advice? Then you're in the right place. So let me ask you something. What if the real engine of a company's growth wasn't strategy or sales, but the people who make it run? Today's guest, Shelley, has built her career around proving just that. As a senior HR executive, she has transformed workplaces by designing strategies that don't just improve operations, but unlock the full potential of people. From building HR departments from the ground up to increasing retention rates by more than 50%, to implementing systems that save organizations tens of thousands of dollars, Shelley has turned HR into a strategic advantage for every company she has touched. So if you've ever wondered how to create a workplace where people thrive, productivity soars, and culture becomes a true differentiator, Shelley's story is one you will want to hear. Shelley, welcome to Wired to
Hi.
Lead.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So HR is your jam, it appears. And
Yep.
I just am curious, what first inspired you to not only enter into HR, but to see it not just as an operational endeavor, but as a strategic advantage?
Well, that's actually a really good question. So I did kind of fall into it a little bit,
Yeah.
but I fell into it because I really saw so many problems with HR departments, problems within companies itself that just needed to be fixed. So I kind of got my start, I'll even say going undercover a little bit in different companies, some pretty big companies actually, and played multiple different roles. We talked about, I have a background in stand-up comedy. I have a background in some improv. So that was kind of a natural flow to go into something like that where I was working, I say undercover. So I would go in and I would create some scenarios that may be an HR nightmare, create some scenarios that could potentially be an operational problem, but also then would look at what they had going on within the organization and find the problems, find the flaws, find the potential lawsuits waiting to happen. So then I started doing it specifically for different companies and fixing problems, creating HR from nothing, because some companies, even in this day and age, had literally had nothing. They didn't have a handbook. That's a problem. So I would get those things going and get them fixed. And that's kind of how it all started.
Okay. Wow. So, okay, when you said that, so did you, there was that TV show, Undercover Boss. You were like
Yes.
undercover HR or like the
Yes.
undercover bad guy, like not bad guy, but like I'm going to come in with this issue and we'll see how they handle it.
Yes, for sure. And in some cases, I would come in as the other employees would think I was a new employee. Sometimes I did get to reveal myself, but most of the time I did not. So I would write up my reports. One of the biggest ones I did that was unbelievable was a 7-day Caribbean cruise. So I know, I was brought on by a major cruise company to come in and evaluate all aspects of everything that they did and just see if there were problems, ask questions of people to see if I could not lead them, but just to kind of see if they knew their stuff. And I would go in, I'd get into their HR departments and I would go through files and look at things and see, oh, you don't have your documentation where it's supposed to be. Little things like that.
Yeah. So as you were moving through all these different scenarios, were there things that surprised you that you found?
Oh my goodness, yes. Lots and lots and lots of things. I think some of the stuff you don't even have to have a background in HR to know that red flag couldn't be any bigger.
Mm.
You know, it wasn't on that cruise. It was on a different weekend thing that I did where me within earshot of other customers, of other guests, hearing employees having completely inappropriate conversations,
Mm.
talking about another coworker's body parts was one.
Oh,
um, and if it's happening in clear earshot of
in
customers,
the open.
it's for sure happening in the back. So
Yeah.
that was one that really shocked me. I think I maybe went into it a little bit naive, thinking that stuff didn't really happen, even though I
Mm.
had experienced some of that in my own, just in my personal life.
Yeah.
But to see that happening within earshot of guests was astounding to me.
So it's interesting because, yeah, so in the work that I do similar things, not quite so undercover, but coming into different teams and organizations and just helping to identify, what's holding them back and trying to identify those root issues and then working through them.
Hmm.
And one of the things I found is that a lot of times leaders, they do recognize some of the problems, but just what you said, there's a hesitance, or maybe the action isn't taken because they aren't sure what to do.
Right.
And so what role does HR generally play in that? How can HR kind of come alongside a leader to help them in those situations?
Well, I think the biggest thing is let me say, everybody thinks HR is always the bad guy, and they're
Yeah.
out to get the employees. They're only ever going to side with the company. That is not the case. If you are a good HR person, that is not how you run your department. That is not how you
Mhm.
handle HR issues. Every time that anything comes up, even in my current place where I'm working now, when something comes up, I look at it as a learning tool. So, and the biggest thing is the why. So, why is it not okay for, and this will be an extreme example, for that employee to take pictures of another employee's tush when they don't know when they don't know that it's being done? Why is
Mhm.
that a problem? And I will always go into it and address it, say, what if that were your daughter and you
Mhm.
found out that somebody was doing that to your daughter? And then that always really does seem to kind of make the light bulb, go off in somebody's head and go, oh, well, you know what? I never really thought about it that way. That is the best thing I can hear from anybody when we're dealing with an
Yeah.
HR situation, is somebody to say, well, I never really thought about it that way.
Mm. Because then you feel like, okay, there's some humility and some space for adjusting and growth.
Hmm.
And if it was just simply that, then we can deal with that.
Right.
If it comes or elicits more of a defensive posture or denial, then that gets a little more tricky.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing that HR people can learn, is to also themselves not be on the defensive. Look at it
Mhm.
as I really am trying to help you. I'm trying to help you
Mhm.
avoid a problem. I'm trying to help you potentially avoid a lawsuit. I'm trying to make you better.
I love that, because so much of what we do too is trying to create trust. And it's really one of the best ways to create trust is to be able to be before and with one another. Like, we're
Hmm.
cheering each other on. We're working to support one another. And sometimes that means pointing out something that's not in your best interest.
Right. Right.
So, yeah. So, before we kind of keep pushing forward into all this HR stuff, I'm just curious, tell us a little bit about just who you are and what experiences have kind of wired you for the roles that you play.
Well, I think the biggest lessons that I've learned that have made me who I am and have gotten me to where I am is to
Mhm.
know what I don't want to be.
Ah, yeah.
I have not always been in a leadership role. I'm not a spring chicken. I've been around for a while, and I've worked at a number of places. And I've had a leader everywhere I've been. Somebody's been my boss, obviously.
Mhm.
And I have learned, if once I get into that kind of a role, I don't want to do that.
Mm.
I don't want to belittle anybody ever. I don't want to
Mm.
talk down to anybody ever. I'm saying those things because all those things happened to me, and I
Mm.
know what it made me feel like. So I know what it's going to make somebody else feel like if that's the kind of leader that I am. But those are
Mm,
all lessons that I had to go through myself to learn what not to do when I'm leading somebody.
yeah. I'm I'm glad you said all of that because so often we look at, who can I learn from a positive role model? And a lot of people haven't had great role models. And
Hmm.
yet the reality is that we can learn from anyone. Sometimes it's we want to emulate, and sometimes we want to create an opposite effect.
Hmm. Yep, that's true. And then I'll say too, through my formative years in my childhood, before I became a working woman or a working
Hmm.
gal, I learned a lot from not only my parents but my grandpa. That man was an absolute saint. I will miss him every day until I'm no longer breathing. Um, he was the phrase I like to use, and I didn't realize that this is what he was until I got into leadership myself. He was a true servant leader. And
Hmm.
that's what I try to do. I look at, I say a lot of times in my head, well, what would grandpa do? And
Hmm.
if it's something he wouldn't do, I don't do it.
Ah, what an amazing example to have growing up.
Hmm.
And I'm just curious, you know, do you remember a story or something that just particularly stands out about how he served those around him?
It literally was every day of his life.
Mm,
There was not a moment when he wouldn't pull over to the side of the road to help somebody change a tire.
mm,
And he did that like into his 80s. He was doing that. Um, he would bring food to people. He would cook and bring food to people. My grandma was like that too, but he was a little more mobile, so he was able to get out and do a little bit
yeah.
more. He served as a deacon in his church. He was a member of the Knights of Columbus. Everything that he did it with a servant's heart. It didn't matter how small it was. It was the foundation, I think, for everything that I am as an adult is what I
Mm.
learned from him.
It almost sounds like, his leadership wasn't about him. It was about
100%.
everyone else.
100%. Yes.
Yeah. And that's the best kind of leadership when it's not to live up to a role or a title or to earn anything. It's to
Right.
lift the people up who are around you.
Hmm. So he ran a
Mhm.
soda bottling company there, and my mom has told me stories about even how he'd bring workers home that maybe didn't have
Mhm.
anywhere to go for dinner, so he'd bring them home and have them have dinner with him. I mean, who does that?
Wow.
He did.
You did, your grandpa. So no wonder. What would grandpa do right
Yep.
now?
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, his influence seems to have rubbed off because you have had a lot of success in
Hmm.
all of your different roles. And one of the things that really stood out to me was just your ability to increase retention rates by more than 50%.
Hmm.
That so I'm currently working with an organization that's their goal
Okay.
is to just increase retention. And in fact, I met with them today, and some of their people literally said, "We have done so many things to try and help. We're hopeful that this will actually work." So it's a hard thing
Hmm.
to transform that part of a company. And so I'm curious, what do you think most leaders misunderstand about keeping their best people?
Well, there's a lot of things there.
Yeah.
Retention starts with the interview before you
Mm,
even extend an offer. You have to engage the person that you're looking at potentially bringing on board. You need to let them know why your company is where they want to be. You need to let them know what kind of opportunities they'll have, that even though they're coming in this role, you're not stuck in that role. And then it goes on to even the onboarding call. Where I'm at right now, I work for a company called Baldwin Paving, and we are heavy civil asphalt company.
mhm,
So a lot of general labor, blue collar type work, a lot of young people.
mm,
Unfortunately, this generation of young people hasn't quite learned that kind of responsibility yet, and
mm,
what it's like to really put in a good full day's work. So we try where I'm at with my hiring manager to set an example before they even come in the door. So
mm,
she spends a lot of time on the phone with the new hire, even before they come in. Here's what to expect. Here's what we're going to do when you come in. Here's what we need to do ahead of time. So there's no surprises. I think one of the biggest thing that we've heard before we really implemented some of this from our candidates, because we will do exit interviews and we'll call, hey, you only lasted 2 weeks. What happened? And they'll overwhelmingly tell us, well, I had no idea what to expect because nobody told me it was going to be like this. And that is so easy to fix. I mean,
So
there are really no surprises in working out on the roadway. It just is. It's the same, pretty much the same thing. You can't control the weather, of course, but
yeah.
it's the same thing. You're doing the same thing. So there should be no surprises. So if we're doing our jobs as onboarding people, and then also the hiring departments are doing their job in setting a realistic expectation, that is what has really helped us with our retention.
That's so interesting because, and it's, I think what strikes me is that a lot of times I'm realizing the role of assumption in leadership, that so many leaders assume that people just know and that they think like they do. And that is just not the case. And so when we can communicate and then communicate again, and then as Lencioni says, over communicate, and then over communicate your over communication, then it starts to eliminate surprises and questions.
Yep. I mean, you know what they say about the word assume, you know, and that is, I mean, it's funny, but it is so true.
It's true.
It is so true. So and that's what we do. We make sure that there are no assumptions. Everything is clear. Everything is out on the table. Here's what we expect of you. Here's what we want you to expect of us, so that we can keep people on board longer. Yeah. And then I really push to the field guys. I always tell them, you want to move up, right? You want to be able to move up in your career, right? And they, every single one of them says yes. Okay, who are you training to replace you? And a lot of times I'll get a, what? Well, who are you training to? Because you can't move up if somebody can't go into your shoes. So what are you doing to train the people below you to take over for you so you can move up?
Wow. What a great leadership development strategy, that you're basically saying, hey, you know, and this is your interview. If you can train someone to take your place, then we're going to trust you to move forward. I mean, those are the kinds of people and employees that we need.
Yep, exactly.
Wow. So kind of bridging into that whole culture idea, how do you measure success beyond the numbers? What do you notice in culture when you are going into different workplaces? What are the things that stick out that become kind of warning signs? And then what are the things that stick out that you're like, yeah, this is a good culture?
Well, I'm going to go back to that servant leadership. That I think is the tell. And, you know, I've known it, you know, because again, of the example that I've had growing up. But that's really what it is. And you can tell pretty quickly if that organization has that, and that's one of their values within that company.
So how does that play out in your current workplace? For people who haven't, they've heard about it, they know about it intellectually, but they have never experienced it.
Well, I think for me, it's me, I have to be that servant leader. You know, I have to be willing to if somebody's out, I'll give you an example. So the front desk at my company reports into HR, and she may need a day off. You know, she may need to take some PTO. She's allowed to take PTO. So we have to get coverage for the desk. I can't ask my team to cover the desk to help out if I won't do it myself. So, and that was from the very beginning when I first started, because this position has reported to me since I've been here. That was the very first thing. I was the first one to go cover that desk. And one of the chief operator in the company walked by that day. He's like, "What are you doing at the desk?" I said, "I can't ask my team to sit here if I won't sit here." And he literally said, "That's leadership." I said, "Well, yeah, it is."
It is. It's leadership for sure. And it's the kind of leadership that people don't experience,
Mm-hmm.
because even he was surprised, what are you doing here? Because senior leaders don't sit at the front desk, but
Yep.
senior leaders should sit at the front desk,
Yep.
right?
And now I don't want to say it's only because of me doing that, but I think part of it with seeing me do that, now when my front desk person needs to take a day, a bunch of people are like, hey, I'll jump in, no problem, I can help out. And something, it may be my AP manager that does that. She has a million and one things to be doing, but she'll take the time to come up and cover that because we're helping out our front desk person to be able to have the time off that she needs.
Yeah. Some of what we at Brave Restoration really promote is connection and collaboration, kind of this mutuality, that we don't care about rank and title. Everyone's valuable. And so the fact that everyone's willing to step in, and now it's become something that, people do voluntarily, is just a testament to this culture of collaborative mutuality, that we're good with this. Nobody's too good or too bad, whatever, to be able to have to force people, in a sense, to do that. It really is beautiful. And I imagine it creates such a sense of safety in that workplace, because people know that the team has their back.
Yes, 100%. And it's not just that example. I mean, it happens all over the company. Are we perfect? No. But it happens. It happens in a lot of places.
That is refreshing. Yeah. What do you see? So this was kind of a positive example. What do you see? What mistakes do you see either in the past, or have you seen even from the place where you sit now, that you see organizations making when they're trying to fix things like turnover, culture?
I have a really good example of that. So at one of my former places of employment, this was retail. I was doing HR in a retail place. The district manager, for whatever reason, did not care for me because I'm very, I don't want to say forward, but I'm very honest.
Yeah.
And I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in Milwaukee. We're very blunt people. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I realize here in the South, I'm in the Atlanta area now. I realize in the South, you have to be a little bit more careful. I'm trying to learn that. It's difficult for this Midwestern girl to learn that. But she just did not like me because I was just so honest. And it was shocking to me that, if somebody was late getting there and I would address it and saying, I understand you were late. Let me tell you why that's a problem and how that affects the business, and go into it. I wasn't mean about it. I was just very open and honest about it. And some people are unfortunately a little too soft and they can't accept that kind of feedback. So she had it in for me. And shockingly, she herself was like that. So I'm not exactly quite sure how it got her so riled up that I was like that, but it was definitely a personality problem and a personality clash that I had with her. And it just led to a very toxic work environment.
A lot of times we are shaped by our past experiences, and what feels normal and okay to one person. For example, you're saying, I'm from the Midwest. This is just how we are. My experiences shaped me that this is okay. And then that comes face to face with someone who grew up with the experiences that is not okay. And all of a sudden, that subconscious limbic system flips into a stress response, fight or flight. And that can create more of a trauma stress response, which we've said, or I always bring out my brain. So I'll bring out my brain for those of you who are watching. For those of you who are just listening, just picture a brain scan from the side. And the smart part of our brain gets shut off, kind of separated from our automatic response system. And there is no logic, there's no
Mm-hmm.
rationale happening. It's just I don't feel safe. I can't do this, which
Yep.
always leads to toxicity. And even that word can be very triggering for people, but what toxicity is, it's it's sick, right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
like an infection. Doesn't mean that it's bad necessarily. It is bad because it can lead to bad things, but it just means there's this wound there that needs to be addressed. And
Right.
if the wound isn't addressed or the root issue, then you just have to part ways.
Yep. And I can even think back to an experience. I mean, this was probably 35, almost 35 years ago. One of
Mm.
my first jobs out of college, had an incredibly toxic boss, that also too just it was not. I know now, many years later, it really wasn't anything to do with me, but at the time, just had it out for me, and would
Mm.
regularly pull me into her office and just berate me. I mean, made me feel like this big. And that is,
Um,
again, that's one of the experiences that shaped me into saying, I'm never going to do that.
yeah. One of the things that I was sharing today with a client is that we have 5 core human needs, and most of us can point out the first 4, food, water, shelter, physical safety.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that most of us forget about is relational belonging or connection,
Mm-hmm.
relational safety. And that's the part that gets stored in our subconscious. And so when people directly assault us in that space, saying, berating us, making us feel like you are bad, not just what you did was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it it will activate our stress response, and it stays with us
Yep.
for our entire lives. The beautiful thing is that the new research is showing that we can rewire some of those memories, where if it had power over us when we were younger, we can rewire it to kind of update our brain's operating system so that we can admit, like, that was painful and it's not true, and I'm not going to let it have the weight that
Right.
it used to have. And yet it's still a very present idea that we
Yep.
have to fight against.
Right. And I think I've chosen to use it as an example of how to be better.
Yeah, how
You
to
know, I tell,
fuel change.
yeah, I mean, I tell my kids all the time, when something happens, or if I'm not perfect. If I do something and I don't make a good decision, and they'll call me out on it, which I appreciate. I'll tell them, well, use this as an example for you later to be better.
Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah. So I hear you really having a desire to unlock the potential in others, to
Mm-hmm.
help draw both yourself too. Like, I want to do better, but I really want those that I'm leading to do better. And so I'm just curious, what are some ways that you interact and lead to be able to accomplish that?
Well, one of my direct reports right now, she came to me asking for mentorship. And
Mm.
if somebody's going to ask you for mentorship, you are not going to say no. So she asked me for that, and so I
Mm.
wholeheartedly accepted that. And then I had to figure out, okay, how do I do that?
Ah.
So I chose to. We kind of created our own little book club, and we're
Yeah.
reading the Book of Joy, which
Mm.
is the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu. And
Mm.
it is, I mean, I am learning so much about myself through this book, learning so much about her through this book. We're
Mm.
very different. And we take little highlighters and we highlight the sections of the book that spoke to us as we're reading the different parts.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're the same. Most of the time we don't pick the same stuff. And so
Yeah.
then we'll talk about that. We're like, well, why did you pick what, I read right over that line. What made you highlight that?
Mm.
And so it's really getting, I think, into getting her to open up, getting me to open up. I'm very uncomfortable in a small setting talking about what what hurts me. I've put up a
Mm.
very big wall because of just, if again from the past, it's some stuff that's so hard to let go.
Yeah.
But this book is really it's helping take some of these walls down and pull some of
Mm.
those wounds off, that hopefully they can just they can be gone forever and I don't have to think about this anymore.
Wow. Well, and what we know about the brain is that you're doing all the right things to do that, because
We're
what our
trying.
brain need is not, I mean, really, the book is just a gathering
Hmm. It's the
tool.
catalyst. Yeah.
It's the catalyst for the process of rewiring, which is people coming together to have interactions that are
Right.
vulnerable.
Right.
I imagine that as you're talking, certain things come up and you can process through it with
Hmm.
someone who's okay
Right.
listening. And that practice is accessing this limbic system, the amygdala, the hippocampus, where all of those deep memories are stored.
Hmm.
But this time, as you recall them, you're having actually a positive experience, that you're sharing this with someone. It becomes a connecting experience, which
Hmm.
updates that part of the brain to say, okay, that was still sad, but now it's almost redeemed or restored into uh, this connecting experience,
Yep.
and it rewires your actual neural networks that are holding those memories.
Yep. And I think it's working. And it's working for me and I know it's working for her cuz she also has a very hard time talking about pain in her life.
Yeah.
Um and she's doing it and it's a lot of stuff is coming out. We've had
Mhm.
some tears in these meetings.
Yeah.
But it's also feeling very freeing to be able to let
Mhm.
go some of this, I'll call it baggage. Um
Yeah.
that I've been carrying around for decades, really.
Yeah.
And just getting, letting it go and really finding the joy. I mean, that's what the whole book is about is yes,
Mm.
you may suffer, but suffering will help lead you to the joy. It doesn't seem like
Yeah.
that should be like
Mhm.
you want to wallow in the pain and the ick, but you've got to go through that to get to the other side to see, okay, that's done. Now let me move forward and see where I can even make things better.
Yeah. I love it. And as I listen to you, I am struck by just the deeply personal things that you are sharing with a coworker. And I'm wondering, are there people that are going to be out there saying, I'm not going to do that at work or with a coworker? And as someone who's kind of been in the HR world where there are rules and regulations,
Hmm.
but also getting to this point in your experience and experiencing this real positive situation, what would you tell someone who feels resistant to opening up any part of their personal life with someone at work?
Well, I mean, it's hard to do. I mean,
Yeah.
because of past, I'll call it trauma in different
Mhm.
places where I've worked. The place I worked right before I worked here was, I mean, that the scars run deep
Yeah.
from how I was treated from the leader there. Um, so I said then, I'm not going to get to know these people. I'm not going to let them know anything about me. Sure, they can know I have a couple of kids and they can know I have some dogs and they can know I like the Packers and all that. Fine, whatever, this superficial stuff. But
Yeah.
getting into the root of who I am, I'm not going to let anybody see that. And I
Yeah.
even had a meeting with my boss. I report to the CEO, and he and I were having one of our biweekly meetings. And he was asking me, "So how's it going?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's good." He's like, "Yeah, I don't like to share a lot about myself either." I'm like, "Well, that's true." But I mean, that was a long time ago. We've he and I have come along. He's awesome. I have to say, he's fantastic. I've never had a better boss
Mhm.
ever.
Wow.
But I mean, now we can talk about some stuff because I think we're comfortable now. I
Yeah.
think that has to come first. You have to be comfortable with the person.
Yeah.
You get to know them on a work level, but then like I've done with the person I'm doing this with, she reports to me. So that even adds another
Mm,
little wrinkle in there.
yeah.
I'm her boss. So, but I
Mhm.
think what we decided from the very beginning, if we're going to read this book, we're not, even though we're at work, we're not at work.
Yeah.
This is for your development. This is for my development. We're going to do this together. But once we close my office door, we're no longer at Baldwin. We're just reading this book as two people, two ladies, trying to make
Mm,
ourselves better.
yeah. And a lot of times there is resistance to that. And
Mm-hmm.
yet, as you develop the person that comes to work every day, everyone wins
Yep.
because home is going to be better, work is going to be better, and it really is a great opportunity for the workplace. I mean, it's where we spend a third of our life
Right.
or of our days. It's where we are. We're sleeping, we're working, and then a little bit we're running all crazy, um, living life. And what a high purpose to be able to create a workplace that is serving one another by
Mm-hmm.
offering places where you can connect.
Right. Yep. And that again, that ties right back to that servant leadership again.
Yeah, it's about, yeah, it's about the people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that leads right into just my question about how do you balance the need for systems and structures with creating a people first culture?
Well, I'll say when I came into this organization, we've been in business for almost 50 years, and
Okay.
things are used to being done a certain way. And I came in and saw a lot of things that needed to be better. Um,
Mm,
Documentation needed to be better.
mm,
There's nothing worse in my thoughts than a terrible employee that can't be taught, doesn't want to be taught, doesn't show up for work, doesn't follow the rules. There's been no progressive discipline put in place for this person.
mm,
They inevitably get terminated. We have nothing to back us up for why they were terminated. They go to get
mm.
unemployment and we can't win. Everybody at my company knows nothing will chap me more than paying out an unemployment claim that is not justified.
Yeah.
So that was a very tough battle to get past, was the
Mm,
documentation. And I had a conversation with one of our plant superintendents who said, well, we've never done that. We've never had to do that. We just get rid of people and we don't think about them again. And so
mm.
I actually had to sit down with him and I said, well, let me give you the why I'm
Yeah.
asking you to do what you're doing.
Mm,
So I just laid it out. I said, for every employee that we can't justify why we let them go, I have to submit a response to the unemployment claim. And if I can't back us up, we're not going to win. And that's $5,100 easily, minimum, in an unemployment claim.
mm,
And he said, wait, what? I said, yeah,
mm.
$5,100 minimum for
Yeah.
unemployment. He's like, I had no idea they could get that much money. I said, yeah, that's why we asked you to give us documentation when you do stuff. And
Yeah.
I've told that to a couple different people in the company. And it has been, I'll be here almost 3 years. I got that implemented for very quickly. I have
Mhm.
not lost a single unjustified unemployment claim, not one.
Wow.
Because they just needed to know why. They
They
needed to know
needed to
why we asked them to do what we asked them to do. And once it's laid out and they understand it, they do it. We very rarely have any trouble with that anymore.
Yeah. It all just circles back to communicating and
Mhm.
working as a team, but to be able to collaborate like that, people have to be in the know.
Right.
And what I find is that so many leaders just assume, oh, they'll trust us. But it's not human nature to trust things when you're asking me to do more work that's going to take time
Right.
and I don't see a reason, I don't understand, then it just doesn't happen.
Right. Right.
Wow.
I mean, and it was quite simple to solve the problem. It was just
Yeah.
letting them know and explaining it. Nobody
Yeah.
had ever done that before.
Yeah. Well, and what I hear you saying too is that you went toward them
Hmm.
and had a conversation,
Hmm.
were probably curious, like, hey, I need you to do this. And you weren't, I'm assuming, demanding and saying, you have to do this because that
Right.
just shuts people down.
Yep.
But being able to go in and with kindness and really wanting the end result. It didn't matter. It wasn't an ego thing. It wasn't about you. It's about the company.
Right.
And when leaders can go to those hard conversations with that in mind, like you said, it usually is an easy fix.
Right. And then two, I mean, we're obviously in the business to make money. You know, we are a revenue
Sure.
generating business. And I actually sat in one of our VP meetings maybe about a year ago, and I kind of got on a little bit of a soapbox, and I said, you know, HR or all the divisions that are out there that are paving the roads and doing the grading work and putting
Mhm.
in the parking lots, they're generating money for the company. You know, hand over fist, they're generating money. But HR and our safety department and our accounting department and our IT department, we will never generate one single penny for this company. Never.
Mhm.
It's not what we do. But you better believe we can cost avoid. And that kind of
Yeah.
shut the room up just a little bit when I told them that. And I said, that's, and again, that's why, you know, if you do the math on the number of, we'll go back to the unemployment claims that we haven't had to pay out. I almost look at that almost as revenue back to the company because we didn't have to spend it.
You didn't have to spend it. You
Hmm.
saved the company that much money. And I imagine compared to other years before you were there, there's a drastic difference.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. Because I can see that data of what we were paying out in the past.
Yeah. So how fun. And I mean, I even just see the joy in you being able to come in and help this company. And it's an amazing company. It's not like
Hmm.
they were meaning to, make these mistakes, but some of
Right.
it was just, they just didn't know.
Exactly.
And so to be able to come in and make such a big difference is, I am sure, very rewarding.
It 100% is. I mean, just, you know, this has been the most fulfilling job I've ever had. This has
Mhm.
been um, the most impactful job I've ever had.
Mhm.
I really feel like I'm making a difference, and my team is making a difference, and our safety
Mhm.
department is making a difference. Um, all of them, accounting is finding stuff that we never did before. It's
Yeah.
just it's definitely a complete culture shift than it was 3 years ago. And I
Yeah.
think any of the people that have been around a really long time, because we do have some people that have been there since the beginning, I think they would
Mhm.
tell you the same thing, that under this current leadership that we have, and there's
Mhm.
15 of us or so,
Yeah.
we are really turning this company in a direction that it's only going to get better.
It feels really fulfilling.
Yep, it definitely does.
So, as you look forward now to the next 3 years, what are the biggest challenges you're facing?
That's a good question. I guess it's trying to figure out what more can I do. Um,
Mm,
you know, because I don't like, again, I do not like to toot my own horn, but you know, there's been a lot of things that I've been able to accomplish
yeah.
that have helped quite a bit. My partner in the safety department would probably tell you the same thing. You know, just being able to improve the safety and keeping our employees safe
Mm,
is so
yeah.
so critical. Um, that's a really good question. I haven't really thought about what I mean. I don't know if I have an answer to what's next for me to do.
Yeah.
Um, I think further developing the leaders that we currently have.
Mm,
You know, I think when we were talking prepping for this, I told you that we
yeah.
partner with a gentleman named Marty Nash that
Yes.
is working with several of our leaders and even some of our managers and helping
Mhm.
them become better leaders. Because we
Mm,
have people that can manage, but they really do not know how to lead.
yeah.
And that is a skill that you have to learn. I don't think you're born with that. Um, so we're working with him, and he's getting more involved in the company, and he's a fantastic find I worked with him at my previous company.
Yes.
And I'll just tell you real quick, the last company I was at said it was mandatory for us to work with him. And I went into it thinking, what is this dude going to teach me about leadership that I don't already know? I've been doing this for so long. I had a cocky attitude. I really did. There is nothing that this guy is going to be able to teach me. I was wrong. I will openly admit I was wrong. He brought some stuff out of me that I did not have knowledge was even in there to some extent. Stuff that I think I had buried down deep that I didn't want to face. He made me face it. And, he has really enlightened me into what it means, not just the servant leadership, but leading with humility, leading with honesty, just all of those things. He's a big proponent of John Maxwell, if you're familiar with him. So I watch my Maxwell minutes every morning because, again, you can never, it kind of knocked me down a peg or two to know that, okay, yeah, you may have been doing this a long time, Shelley, but you don't know it all.
Yeah. What a fabulous note to end on, because I think, circling back to the greatest leaders are servant leaders. And one of the hallmarks of a servant leader is being able to say, I was wrong.
Yep. And I say it all the time because I'm not right all the time. I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be perfect. I just had an incident this morning. Ironically, I got a little triggered by something that somebody who reports to me said, and I got a little extreme in my reaction, and then turned around and went and hid in my office, and I sat there for maybe 30 seconds and went, wow, you're kind of a jerk. And I had to own that. So I did. I took a few minutes and I went to her office and I apologized and said that was uncalled for. I got a little bit triggered. I shouldn't have, and I'm sorry.
Thank you for sharing that. I just think, leaders, sometimes we look at leaders and think that they have to be perfect. And sometimes leaders feel like they have to, and they just don't. And we all get triggered. We all lose it and snap at someone. And there's a couple of things that, those just are pointing to us to say, hey, there's something there that you could probably explore and heal. And in the aftermath, what are you going to do about it in the short term? So there's a short term, go apologize. And then there's the more longer term, okay, I'm going to kind of look at this and see what's going on. So thank you for normalizing that. Well, Shelley, our time is up. But I just want to say thank you so much for being on here, for being vulnerable, for sharing with us all of your insights and expertise about leadership and HR.
Well, I really, really appreciate it. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on. And I look forward to trying to continue to grow myself. And, hopefully if others see this, they'll be a little bit motivated to know that you don't know it all. and you can there's always room to grow, I think is the biggest thing.
Absolutely. Shelley Hernandez, everyone. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Wired to Lead. If this helped you lead with more clarity today, hit follow in your app so you never miss an episode, and leave a short review in Apple Podcasts. 2 sentences is perfect, and it helps leaders like you to find us. If you're a leader who would like to explore opportunities for workshops or coaching with Brave Restoration, please reach out to our website at www.braverestoration.org. We would love to hear from you. See you next time.